Hi everyone, it's Kim from Eclectic Paperie, and I am here today to share a technique with you. This is called the Speckled Gesso Resist Technique, and we're going to use gesso as a resist for distressed stains. So this is what we're going to need to get started. We need a surface that we're going to stamp on. I'm using a tag. We need a credit card and some gesso. This is Claudine Hellman's gesso, and this is one of the minis, which are great to use because you can really control how much product you get on your sheet. So what we're going to do is start with putting out some of the gesso in a line on our non-stick craft sheet. And then I'm going to use the edge of my credit card to pick up the product. So I'm going to load that until I have a good amount here on the edge of the card. And then keeping my card completely flat, I'm going to very gently pull down the card until I get this nice speckled effect. And the key to this is to making sure that you pull very gently. You don't want to push down, you don't want to go at an angle like this because you're not going to get any product on your surface. And you also don't want to keep it completely flat and push too hard because then you'll cover your entire tag with the product, and we don't want to do that. So very, almost barely touching the card, and you'll get this nice, almost like old plaster effect. So you can see what that looks like when we're finished. And you can set this aside to dry, or you can use a heat tool to speed up the process. I have used a heat tool, and of course have one that is already completed, and that is already dry and ready to go. So this one's completely dry, and now I'm going to use distressed stains, and I'm using two different colors for this particular tag. I'm using Wild Honey and Barn Door, and I'm going to just cover the tag with the Wild Honey, with the distressed stain. Again, we're going to push down until the product starts moving, starts coming out, and then we'll move that around. And the gesso is going to create a resist, as you can see, once the stain gets on the tag. And again, we don't want to squeeze the bottles very hard or you'll end up with product all over the place. Once you push down and the dispenser releases some of the product, the rest of it will flow pretty easily. So now if I don't like this because there's no blending of the colors. So, of course, with the distressed stains, they react with water. And so I can just spritz that a little bit and let that color move around. And then, again, we can dry this with a heat tool or set it aside to dry. I already have one that's finished and dried, of course. The miracle of video. We have one that's already done. And this is a really fun thing to see. You know, every time you do this technique, you're going to end up with a design that's a little bit different. So you're never going to get the same thing twice, which is great. So if we wanted to add a little bit more design to the background, we could, even though this is completely dry, if you wet distressed stain, it will still react with the water. So I can add a few little droplets here and there if I want in some of the stain areas, and you'll be able to see that. And again, we can dry that with a heat tool. I have a very loud heat tool, so I'm not going to dry that on camera. But I can actually, if I let it sit there for a minute, I can come back in and dab that with my paper towel, and I'll still get some of the same effect. It'll pick that up. So I want to add a little bit of color also to the edges. This is a little bright for my taste. I like things a little more toned down, so I'm going to use gathered twigs and a blending tool to add a little bit of color onto the edge. And again, when you're picking up your ink and you're holding your tool, you don't want to hold it way up at the top here or down like this. I hold pretty much the bottom piece of the wood, and we're going to work off starting on our non-stick craft sheet. We're not going to go directly, stamping down on top of the tag. We're going to pick up some ink, and we're going to work in small circles. And we're going to start on the craft sheet first, and then move on to the tag. Blending in small circles. That's when you can get the best blending of the ink, and you're not going to have, these kind of rectangle shapes of color on your tag. And that creates very subtle effect that way, and you can just blend those colors. Distress inks are awesome because they have such great blending capabilities. And I really like I'm a little heavier with my ink on the edges because it kind of creates that color. Love it. What a difference between the two. Just by adding a little bit of ink on the sides, you can see what we started with from the color and what we ended up with adding the gathered twigs. And then we can stamp right on top of this. or we can add different layers. There's so many different options. We can add, I'm going to add just a little bit of a text background stamp, and I'm just swiping my archival ink pad across the top so that I get a very subtle effect. I'm not looking for a very heavy-handed stamped image. I don't want it very dark. I want it to be almost not that easily seen. And then I can also come in with just, this is a cracked glass background, and now come in and press a little bit harder. And you'll see I'll get a little bit deeper and darker image. And then for my focal point, I'm going to use the dragonfly. And I'll ink that up. And we can put that right here. And of course I'm going full strength, as it were, with my ink so that this will show up really well. And there you have a completed tag. And now you can use it on gifts. You can use it on a card. You could use it in your journal pages. So many different options. I also wanted to show you what I did using this exact same technique and translating onto cards. I even created some background paper, journal page. There's so many options. Here I just used a scrap piece of paper, did the exact same technique, just used different colored stains, used a silhouette stamp. This is from Sweet and Sassy. To stamp an image, add a sentiment. I've got a card that took me about 5 minutes to create. I also created a partial journal page that I'm going to use as an inclusion in my Dilutions journal. Again, just a larger surface, but did the exact same technique. Gesso, my stains on top. Once that was all dry, I tore my edges, came back with a distressing tool. I added this great image from Donna Downey. This is a Hollyhocks image, and I don't know if you've seen the size of these stamps, but they are huge. They're perfect for art journals. A sentiment, again, from another Unity stamp set called She Sprouted Wings. Those are designs by Melody Ross. So that's going to be a great page inside my art journal. And then I also used some of the leftover paper that I made, because this was a large piece of paper that I used. And I used the pocket watch frame die to cut that out. And again, this could be decorated. And I also ran a part of the paper through an embossing folder. So this is a great way to make even your own designer papers that you can use in your journals, that you can use on canvas pieces, that you can use on tags. Just love it. So many great ideas. Love to hear from you. Share your ideas and your projects on our Facebook page. Let me know what you think. Try out this technique and let me know what you think of it. Thanks so much for watching today, and I hope you enjoyed our technique. Happy crafting!